Welcome to Nebraska Farmcast, a production of the Center for Agricultural Profitability at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. I'm Ryan Evans. The average value of agricultural land in Nebraska is up 16% this year, according to the newly released preliminary report of the annual Nebraska Farm Real Estate Market Survey by the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. The all-land average of $3,360 per acre is the highest land value reported in the 4-decade history of the survey. One of the co-authors of the survey and report, Nebraska Extension agricultural economist Jim Jansen, is with me now to discuss more about trends in land values across the state and what is factoring into those increases. Hi, Jim. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
So I mentioned the Nebraska Farm Real Estate Market Survey has been conducted by UNL's Department of Agricultural Economics for over 40 years, I believe since 1978. Can you just tell us what the historical significance is of this year's survey findings and the scope of the history of the survey?
So the survey has been conducted since 1978 as part of the annual series of information, the time series, where we report the average value of agricultural land in Nebraska. The average value reached a high of, as you noted, of $3,360 an acre. And this is approximately $60 higher than the prior high. While we're not adjusting this for inflation, prior peak was set in 2014. And during 2014 versus, I guess we're not quite at 2024, but the last time we've seen a strong run-up was roughly a decade ago, where we had similar things happening related to a rise in commodity prices, a period in which we had exceptional drought, which this year is sizing up to have possibly be quite dry in parts of the Corn Belt here. And the similarities are kind of shared throughout, where anytime we get extreme economic forces, we start to see some of the things. An example, the value of land, equipment, whatever it might be, we see those fluctuate as well. And when you don't adjust it for inflation, we basically met or slightly exceeded that prior high set in 2014.
And you have a new article on the Center for Ag Profitability's website at cap.unl.edu, where you really nicely lay out what you're talking about with inflation and how it plays into the value of land in Nebraska. Can you talk just a little bit more about that and how inflation plays into the record value of land found this year, or maybe just how inflation, again, should be considered when looking at the value of land over the history of the survey?
So as part of our series in which we evaluated the historic value of land, we took what is called the first quarter GDP price deflator, and we didn't use the annual, but the first quarter, just given the time of the year in which our publication was coming out right now. And what we did as part of our inflation adjustment, we took the historic value of land from 2022 and dated it back all the way to 1978, and we adjusted this time series for inflation by using the first quarter price deflator. And what we saw is we're basically taking all those historic values and we're adjusting them for inflation. We're putting them in terms of 2022 dollars. And when you adjust for inflation, the highest peak in land values actually occurred not in 2022, but in 2014. And it was very close. It wasn't quite $4,000 an acre. So when you account for inflation, the picture in which you're looking at, things are looking different. So 2014 was one peak. Another very notable, while it wasn't the highest, was occurring back in the late 1970s. The value of land, if you adjust it for inflation, was roughly $2,000 an acre, and then it declined through about 1986 or 1987, and then slowly started growing. And over time, if you take a look at the article, you'll see that it grew at a very small but steady rate from about 1987 until roughly 2005 or 6, and then it started reaching the first plateau in 2007-8, and then it continued to climb to reach the all-time inflation-adjusted value at 2014, where it was just shy of $4,000 an acre.
And we've been talking so far about the all-land or statewide average value of farmland in Nebraska. But of course, Nebraska, there are a lot of different land types here in the state. So can you just kind of go over some general regional trends that you found for this year's survey when it comes to reported land values?
Yeah, so as part of our annual survey, we report dryland, cropland with or without irrigation potential, center pivot, gravity or flood irrigation, hayland, as well as the overall state average. And the other two I forgot were grazing land with or without development potential, basically, or tillable, as we call it. And in addition to all those different types of land, we also report the overall average for the state. Overall, if you review our information in Table 1 of what we refer to as the preliminary estimates, we found the value of land peaked. We had the strongest growth occurring mainly in eastern Nebraska and especially northeast Nebraska. I recall right from memory, I think they had an overall increase of around 21% year over year. So it really depends where you're at in the state, but overall, eastern Nebraska showed quite a bit of strength. And there are also other areas in western Nebraska that showed some increases as well, but the strongest increases were tied mainly to the cropland industry, which are reflective of the higher commodity prices we're seeing for cropland. The beef industry prices are up as well, but also the cost of production is up significantly for beef producers, as given the cost of grains or forages or whatever you might be feeding the animals.
And if we can pause for a moment and just review who is responding to this survey, how you gather the data, who is responding, who is this going out to, and where are you getting this information from?
So we refer to the people that take our surveys, the land industry professionals across the state. This includes professional farm and ranch management offices, agricultural appraisers, agricultural bankers, other allied individuals that work in the land industry, maybe like crop insurance or insurance agents, other agencies that are in the state. Really the people that kind of have firsthand knowledge on the land transactions occurring across the state. The people that maybe have a line of credit with a bank or a financial institution of some kind where the loan officer would be knowledgeable about what is occurring in the land industry with respect to, using a line of credit. So they're looking at, one of those sources of a line of credit might be used for paying for cash rent, for example. So it's kind of really the firsthand knowledge of what is occurring on the eyes and ears of what people working in the land industry are observing or experiencing in their professional opinions, and what's coming in from that is what we summarize.
And can you talk more about what those respondents said about the factors behind this 16% jump that we saw in average land value this year?
So some of the leading factors that are led to the high values that we're seeing right now, they included one of the first things was the current commodity price levels for corn, soybeans, wheat, other small grains or row crops raised across our state was one of the leading factors. Another thing mentioned was the store of value against inflation. Land is a tangible investment. If people are concerned about inflation, they tend to buy things. They might buy equipment, a home, a car, land. And the idea being if you don't buy it now, in the future it's going to cost even more. So commodity prices, source of wealth to store against inflation that might occur. We also seen the use of land, how favorable current interest rates are to finance long-term debt. And also the other thing that we're seeing is land has an excellent way if you have what is called a 1031 exchange, in which you might sell another real estate, maybe it's land, maybe it's a home, maybe commercial property. People that are moving value or capital through the 1031 exchange from another asset into a land holding here, maybe in Nebraska, where it's closer to their farm, whatever. We also seen the 1031 exchange was quite popular this year or this past year because of some of the potential changes that might result with the 1031 exchange, or the possibility to see changes in the possibility of changes in the laws that guide capital gains tax.
looking ahead, what is the outlook for real estate values in the ag land industry?
I would expect this upcoming year, so many of the things that we're facing. So without a doubt, drought is probably a major concern across much of the state. With that being said, is drought going to spread into other areas of the United States, even further into the main grain belt, so the main corn belt? What effect might that have on prices? There are geopolitical events that might be guiding prices higher as well. In the beef industry, there's a lot of concern right now on the availability of forages related to pastures and things of that nature. So I would suspect that we're going to see probably fairly high commodity prices. We might see interest rates go up a little. I don't know if they're going to go up to the degree they did in the 1980s, but that would be, higher commodity prices would be a positive force. Higher interest rates I still feel they're very low, but if we gradually see them increase over time, higher interest rates tend to lead to lower real asset values. So we got two of those big things going on. Geopolitical events, what does that mean for input costs? What does that mean for trade patterns and that? There's a lot of uncertainty there. I would assume we'll probably see, maybe not a 16% increase, but I would guess we're probably going to see maybe some higher values, or at least some very competitive values with respect to what we had reported this year and how it might end up in the following year that we'll see.
All right, that is Jim Jansen, an agricultural economist with Nebraska Extension and our Center for Ag Profitability here at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. He has a new article on these historic high Nebraska farmland values in 2022 on our website, cap.unl.edu, where you can also find the Nebraska Farm Real Estate Market Survey report if you check out cap.unl.edu/real estate, and that will let you know about land values across the state as well as cash rental rates. And that preliminary report, again, just came out in the last week or two, and the final one is expected to be published this summer. So, Jim, thank you very much for your time and the great info.
Thanks for having me. Bye.
Nebraska Farmcast is a production of the Center for Agricultural Profitability at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. For the latest research-based information and education resources to manage your farm or ranch operation, visit our website at cap.unl.edu. That's cap.unl.edu.